The full 2024 Miami Hurricanes football schedule has been released. And you know what that means? It means it's time for us to talk ourselves into 12-0, baby.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Now, I'm not literally predicting a 12-0 season, at least not yet. We don't make our predictions until shortly before game one, but had to say that because the trolls are going to get in here, the FSU and Florida fans, like, hey, look at this idiot. Look at this Miami idiot who's predicting a 12-0 season. Their coach doesn't know how to take a knee. This idiot has a name, by the way. I am Alex Donno. I'm a University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and contributor to allhurricanes.com. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts, and your first watch. We are free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Finally, yesterday at 5 p.m., the full Miami Hurricanes football schedule, all of the full ACC football schedules were revealed. We knew all the opponents, yes, but we only knew the first 5 dates confirmed. So the remaining 7 came out. So let's take a look at this beauty. Miami Hurricanes put out this graphic on their X account yesterday. So the Hurricanes open up their season. This is one we've been waiting for. We knew this was coming, though. August 31st, the Hurricanes will play away at the Florida Gators. First meeting since 2019 back in Orlando. Miami lost that one, but the Hurricanes do lead the all-time series with Florida 29-27. This one is notable for so many reasons, including the fact that it's projected to be the Miami debut for new starting quarterback Cam Ward. The prize acquisition of the offseason is going to take the field in orange and green officially for the first time, going up against the Florida Gators. That's going to be so much fun. So after the Florida game on the road, Hurricanes will be home September 7th against Florida A&M. They'll be home September 14th against Ball State. Needless to say, those should be 2 consecutive wins, no matter what happens in the Florida game, which I think Miami could also win that Florida game. Saturday, September 21st, Miami's going to be away at South Florida. So you're not going to be leaving the state of Florida for a long time, because even the week after that, the Hurricanes on Friday, September 27th, you're going to be home against Virginia Tech. That's the only weeknight game of the season. That's a Friday night. Miami versus the Hokies, by the way, has once again become a protected annual matchup. The ACC had taken the annual away from it last year. They realized they goofed, and it's now a protected annual matchup once again. So, folks, if you look at those first 5 games, Gainesville, in Miami, in Tampa, and then back in Miami, you don't even leave the state of Florida until Saturday, October 5th, when you go away at Cal. Now, I know Cal, you're probably not as familiar with them. They're coming into the ACC for the first time. They've got a really good running back, Jaden Ott, 1,300 plus rushing yards, 12 touchdowns last year. And of course, going out west could be tricky. Miami has their first, yes, they have 2 bye weeks, first of 2 bye weeks after that. So Saturday, October 12th, Miami does not play. Then Saturday, October 19th, this is going to be a really tough one. I think this is one of the 2 toughest games on the schedule. October 19th, Miami is away at Louisville. An important revenge game, of course, from last year. This is the type of game that could be decisive, potentially, for being one of the top 2 records in the ACC. Then Saturday, October 26th, you've got the home matchup against Florida State. That's a tough stretch, folks. You have to go back-to-back from Louisville to Florida State, Louisville away, Florida State at home. You look at that 2-game stretch, that could make or break Miami's season, right? If you go 0-2 in that stretch, oh my gosh, I don't even want to know what those shows are going to be like. You go 2-0, you're on top of the world. You go 1-1, I guess we split the difference. Also, going back to that Louisville game, you note that that's coming after the bye week. Miami has not historically played very well coming off of bye week, so you keep your fingers crossed that that one works out a little bit better than previous bye weeks have. So after the Florida State game, another important one, Saturday, November 2nd, you're hosting Duke. Manny Diaz is now the head coach of Duke. Malik Murphy now their quarterback. That's a big showdown. That's a must-win game for our fan base. Can you imagine the implosion? Can you imagine the reaction and the implosion if Miami doesn't beat Manny Diaz and Duke at home? I would imagine Miami would be heavily favored in that game, but stranger things have happened, as we know. Then you've got another I skipped the game. After the Duke game, you've got November 9th away at Georgia Tech. Please, this time, take the knee if you have the opportunity to do so. Then you've got your second bye week is the weekend of Saturday, November 16th. Coming off that bye week, you're home against Wake Forest, and then you're home against Syracuse, wrapping up the regular season on November 30th. So, again, tough to predict this far out, but obviously Miami, I think, has a top 2, 3, 4 ranked roster in the entire ACC. If you look at the schedule, it's cool that you don't play Clemson in the regular season this year. It's nice to avoid them. You don't play NC State in the regular season this year. I expect NC State to be one of the better teams in the conference. So avoiding the two of those, you catch a little bit of a break on this one. And, all things considered, if Cam Ward meets expectations, if Miami's team stays relatively healthy, especially at the line of scrimmage, I could definitely see a 10-win type of season here looking at the schedule. Away at USF could be kind of tricky. That was nearly a trap game for Alabama last year. I'll emphasize this again. The road trip out to Cal will not be easy. And I was thinking about this, and this is now going to be a semi-regular thing for ACC teams now that you've got Cal and Stanford. You don't play Stanford in the regular season, but now that you've got Cal and Stanford both in the ACC, you have to travel out there every now and again, out to Northern California. When was the last time Miami traveled that far for a regular season game? Correct me if I'm wrong, and I might be, but the last time I remember Miami traveling that far in the regular season was back in 2000 when they lost to Washington, and that ended up costing Miami a national championship appearance in the BCS that year. So I can't remember traveling that far. If you guys think of one that I'm forgetting, let me know. But that's a long way to travel for a regular season game. And obviously that's going to be harder on the Cals and the Stanfords because they're going to be out on the East Coast on the regular. So that's going to be something that they're going to have to deal with quite a bit. So that is Miami's complete 2024 football schedule. I'd love it if you guys leave me your thoughts below. Games you're worried the most about. What's your predicted record going to be? Are you going all in at 12-0? Are you going 8-4? Do you not have faith? Toughest stretch, I think we can all agree, is Louisville again and Florida State back-to-back. Those are arguably the two toughest games on your schedule, and you play those teams in back-to-back weeks. So give me your thoughts below. And folks, we are not nearly done on this new episode of Locked On Canes because I'm not just here to talk about the schedule. I'm here to talk about Junior Day. I'm here to talk about battle 7-on-7, 5-on-5. Folks, I'm not overhyping this. I don't think the weekend that Miami is about to have for recruiting, you're going to have, and obviously a lot of these players are in town for battle, and Miami's going to be busing these guys down to their campus to check it out. You are going to have literally over 70 blue chip prospects checking out your campus and meeting your coaches this week. 2025 players who are wrapping up their junior high school years, already wrapped up their junior high school seasons, a bunch of 2026 guys as well. So you know what we had to do? We have to bring in the recruiting overlord. Brian Smith, our recruiting overlord, my colleague at allhurricanes.com, and also the recruiting expert here on the Locked On Podcast Network, is going to join us. I want to talk about some of these blue chip visitors coming in. One of them being, we spoke with this man's father earlier this week, Canon Pickett, top offensive lineman of the class of 2026, the younger brother of Booker Pickett, who's a Miami signee, and the son of Booker Pickett Sr., who joined our show earlier this week. So we have so much to get to. We are only getting started. You want to keep it locked right here. Recruiting talk next on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. And my friends, you need to keep it locked to eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. Guys, make sure you're checking out Locked On Sports Today. This network has launched the first ever 24/7 streaming sports YouTube channel. Locked On Sports Today always has you covered, just like my guy Brian Smith always has you covered. He is the recruiting expert here in these parts, the recruiting overlord, we call him. He's also my colleague at allhurricanes.com. And every time Brian joins us, he's brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Now, Brian, you've been running around the Southeast like a headless chicken for the last few days, covering recruiting and covering high schools. I'm glad we could catch you stationary here for a few minutes.
Well, I'm in another hotel, but that's another story. It's fun, man. You never know who you're going to run into, which is what I did recently in the state of Alabama. So it's always an adventure.
Yeah, we were talking on the phone the other day, and you're like, of all the states and all the high schools in America, you're at a certain high school in Alabama, visiting and talking to players, and then you come to find out Jason Taylor happens to be on his way later that day to that high school.
Yeah, Enterprise, Alabama is in southeastern Alabama, and it's pretty remote. But they've got two elite players. And sometimes it just goes in cycles. One of which is somebody that Miami fans will probably hear about if they haven't already, is Zion Grady. He's an edge defender, 6'4", 225. Obviously fits the profile for what Jason is looking for. And he was coming in at 215, so I had to get there before Jason did so the coach could be with him. And I got there at like 12:30, 1 o'clock. So I beat Jason there. But that same school earlier that day, I was in between because Kirby Smart from Georgia had flown in on his helicopter. It's one of those programs. So, yeah, Miami, though, like you don't think of Miami recruiting rural Alabama, rural Mississippi and stuff like that. Caleb Cunningham, who I'll talk about here in a little bit, kid from Mississippi is getting ready to visit. He's from rural Mississippi. Those kids, Miami's putting in the work. And this is off back-to-back top 10 classes. And to be honest with you, probably top 5 that are balanced classes. So seeing that early on for the 25 and 26 kids, there's some 26 kids they're offering if you check Twitter and whatnot. I tell you what, it's impressive to me because not many staffs really want to do it. And It's a pretty big collection of guys. If you go look at the tweets or when a kid makes a comment, they talk about the coaches directly, whether it's Mario, whether it's Jason, whether it's Woodall, whatever the guy is that's at the school that day, wherever it's at. They get a lot of attention. And it's, Mario was in Chicago. He was in Cincinnati. He's been in Georgia yesterday, et cetera. These are really good signs for Miami's future.
I love that. We're going to be talking with Brian about a lot of the players who are going to be down. There's going to be well over 70 blue chip recruits in 2025 and 2026 who are going to be down for Battle 7-on-7 and the 5-on-5 line of scrimmage. And so many of these guys will be visiting Miami for Junior Day. Let's talk about a guy who I don't believe is visiting this weekend, but he is a Miami verbal commit, has been so since before his junior season in high school, and that's quarterback Luke Nickel. So Luke Nickel out of Milton, Georgia. And Brian, from where I sit, he's only gained more momentum, had a really good high school season. How high did Luke Nickel, who's committed to Miami, how high did he raise his stock in the high school season that just passed his junior year? And how tough is it going to be for Miami to hold on to him? Because I hear about the Georgia Bulldogs starting to take notice a little bit.
Well, he led his team to the state championship this past year, and they had to go on the road multiple weeks where they were the underdog before they even got to the finals. And he was a big reason why they won. So that's going to catch Kirby's attention and everybody else. So that's part of it. Miami was one of the first to really go after him, and obviously he committed to the University of Miami before his junior year started. So they built a relationship. Again, this is about work ethic that we were just talking about a moment ago. Is Georgia and everybody else going to catch his attention? Sure. I mean, it's his state school. He's an hour and a half from Athens, where he lives on the north edge of Atlanta. But to my knowledge, he wants to go to Miami. And part of it, I think it's just that they were the first one to really prioritize him out of the list of schools he was interested in. That matters. It matters to parents, the high school coach, etc. But that doesn't mean other schools aren't going to still come after him. It's recruiting. Nothing matters until you sign and the ink is dry.
So a player who will be here this weekend, I know that because his dad told me he will be, is Canon Pickett. So for those who missed it earlier this week, and it was one of the coolest episodes we've done, Booker Pickett Sr. joined Locked On Canes. He's the father of Booker Pickett Jr., who is signed with Miami and was just terrorizing opposing offensive lines and opposing quarterbacks at a couple of all-star games earlier this month. But he's also got another son, Canon Pickett, who's a top 2026 offensive lineman. And Brian, Canon is going to be competing in the 5-on-5 competition this weekend. What should Miami fans know about him?
Well, he was a kid when I saw him as a freshman. I thought he was a senior. I showed up to see his older brother and some other kids at Wharton High School, and they're like, by the way, that's Pickett's younger brother. And I'm like, which one? And they pointed. I'm like, he's a freshman? He was like 270, 280 really quick. You know what I mean? He was a big kid, and he's just continue to change his body. He's going to play left tackle. He could play inside or outside. He's a big Miami fan, so that's helpful. I'm pretty sure that's where he's going to end up if I heard everything correctly. And I've talked to him about it. He likes Miami a lot anyway.
Yeah,
but that's a really good athlete. He can play in space. He can get out on the screen game. I've seen him in practices and in games. He's a physical kid, and he'll be a national recruit. He'll be able to pick his school. But right now, Miami is definitively the team to beat.
Yeah, another 2026 player who's going to be down this weekend, and he's going to check out Miami's campus, is Dia Bell, quarterback in American Heritage. His father, great dude. I've interviewed him many times. Former NBA star Raja Bell, who loves Miami. I know that I know Dia's got a lot of schools out there that are already interested in him. You've had a chance, I'm sure, to watch him in American Heritage. What are some of your takeaways?
Very advanced in terms of his understanding of just sport in general, being a leader, helping the team. You need to do that at quarterback anyway, but he helped his team as a sophomore. It was one of the youngest teams in the state of Florida, be very successful. And they've got a bunch of speed and stuff, but his group, the sophomores from last year at American, they got a bunch of track kids, but they didn't know what they were doing when I came to see them before the season got really going. They were trying to figure it out. By mid-season, they were rolling along, and it was because of him. Passing game in advance, the running game. They got two really good running backs at Miami's after, Desenor and, of course, Byron Lewis. But they were balanced all of a sudden. They went so far in such a short time. It was incredible. And that's a consummation of all the different parts coming together. It starts with him. And he was always positive. Even in practice today, I was there. They didn't have a great practice. Real positive kid. And I don't even know how many times he's been to Miami already. They prioritized him. And it's important, in my opinion, to get him because so many people know him. And everybody kind of gravitates towards D. He's a good kid, fun to be around. It would be huge for Miami to get him to commit, especially if they did it early, because so many other kids would probably like to play with him.
Yeah, it's a good call. One of those guys that if you can get someone like that locked in, he's like a magnet. He's going to bring other players on board. I love that. Well, okay, I want to talk a little bit more about this just insane list. Over 70 top prospects are going to be visiting Miami this weekend, Junior Day, which is cleverly done on the same weekend as these battle 7-on-7 and 5-on-5 competitions. I want Brian to share some of the players he's looking forward most to covering this weekend. So, folks, we are not done yet. We've got the recruiting overlord with us. We continue on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Keep it locked. We love the everydayers who join us here every single day here on Locked On Canes. And if you want to take your everydayer experience to the next level, sign up for our exclusive SMS texting service, Locked On Canes Insiders. I include the link in the show description below. When you become an insider, you get text messages directly from my phone to yours, breaking news, one-on-one Q&As, transfer portal, breaking news and nuggets, recruiting scoops, all sorts of stuff. Try it free for 14 days by clicking the link in the show description below, Locked On Canes Insiders. And then if you like it, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. We give you a lot of added value on there. All right, so Brian, I know you're going to be incredibly busy this weekend, especially since it's my anniversary on Saturday. So I just told Brian she's all yours. Junior Day is all yours, my friend. So who are you looking forward most to covering this weekend?
There are so many kids. I was trying to narrow it down under 20. My criteria was basically because so many kids from the West Coast and like Alabama and different states are coming. Some of the kids that I wouldn't normally see or wouldn't normally get to visit the U. So first on my list is a kid that I know well, KJ Lacey from Saraland, just outside of Mobile. He's committed to Texas, but Alabama was after him, and then the whole Saban thing happened. He's a big-time quarterback prospect. I don't know if KJ's really that interested in Miami or not, so I'm really intrigued because he's an elite kid. If anything did go wrong with Nickel, that would be a kid I'm sure they would turn to. He's one of the top players in the country. James Simon, running back out of the state of Louisiana, elite player. He's only visited a handful of schools that he's really interested in, but Miami has both coordinators from that state. So anytime I see a Louisiana prospect, I know there's a connection. I mean, AJ's from northern part of the state too, where this kid's from in northern Louisiana. I'm curious about that. This kid's got a chance to be an NFL player. Love him. Maybe the most intriguing would be Marco Jones. He's from Danville, California, just outside of San Francisco. He's the rare 6'5" kid that can play linebacker and play in space. He has an offer from pretty much every school in the country. Really good kid. I heard him on a podcast recently. Wide open list. So Miami's as good a bet as anybody. He could go to SC. He could go to Michigan. He could go to Miami, wherever. Locally, Chris Ewald, the corner. We've talked about him before on this show. If there's a defensive player in South Florida that I think Miami has to get in this recruiting class, it's Chris. He was committed to Michigan. He's at Chaminade, but he's a top-notch corner. Miami has to get more elite corners consistently, and that's the same thing that every school does. And this kid's right down the road from you. This would be a very important get. And I'll finish up with Cortez Mills. He's a kid that's from Homestead. He is a burner. You'd like to keep those kids at home as well. You know, Miami Central, Homestead, Miami Killian, whatever it is. Those are some of the kids I'm interested in. Anytime you get speed, I'm automatically interested.
Well, I'm really glad you brought up Ewald because I did some Q&A on yesterday's episode, and one of the questions that I got was about, someone concerned about Miami's cornerbacks, that that they've obviously they've had some misses the last couple of years in recruiting. Like, we thought Cormani McClain was coming. Miami tried to flip Ellis Robinson in this past cycle, but he ended up sticking with Georgia. Not to say they haven't brought in talent, Brian. I think they're a bunch of the guys they're bringing in 2024 are good and underrated, if nothing else. I saw what Ryan Mack did in that Under Armour game. And I really liked Amari Brown. And, you covered him at Heritage. He had some good moments toward the end of the year this past year. There's going to be a whole nother battle there because now that Florida State has taken his older brother in the transfer portal, that's a chess move all day by Mike Norvell. Like, he's going to try to use Devontae Brown to try and lure Damari Brown later on. Hopefully he resists that temptation. But, I look at Damari Brown as possibly being a starter next year, maybe at the Star, maybe a cornerback. Like, could this be the guy? Like, for anybody out there who's like, I'm really worried about Miami's cornerback room, could Damari Brown be a guy who ends up really shining for the next couple of years?
I think Damari is going to be the key. I think you're on target there. Now, we both thought other players at corner and other spots were going to be the guys. So you got to go through spring ball, and then you got to go to that's why you go through the practices. But like you said, Damari played well at the end of last year. Like, he played against Florida State last year and did well. Did we really think a true freshman was going to play well in Doak Campbell? Not really. That's a pretty good receiver corps. But now he's got another spring under his belt to go through, the summer and all the strength and conditioning. Damari is probably a little more advanced technically because of playing at Heritage and having an older brother that's been through the ringer and all that. I think he has an NFL future. He might even be a 3-and-out kid because he's got the size you're looking for. He's 6'1 plus, and he's pretty stout. So hopefully he's Miami's next guy if you're a Canes fan, because they need somebody to step up there. If you're going to get into the playoff, you got to have one of those cover one guys that can just take away a player.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. In closing here, Brian, how important is this weekend, and how does Miami even manage this? Like, when you're going to have, somewhere between 70 and 100 players coming through, you only have so many coaches and so many staffers. So this is an opportunity where I'm sure Miami's obviously going to have to prioritize certain players over others. That's just the nature of the game. But how big of an opportunity is this for Mario?
The ability to keep everybody happy thing, I don't know how the heck you do that, because there'll be multiple. What they do is an entire 7-on-7 team will bring their players down. And then you're entertaining some of the kids you're not going to offer, and they know that, but they just want to see it, and they all kind of come down. You have to have your full staff, interns, and everybody involved. Every school would be in the same boat. But, I mean, like, this will be as large a junior day visitor list for any school ever, because Battle Miami's big, and now you're adding the 5-on-5 list.
Yeah.
A couple of my buddies are running that, and I mean they're an elite linemen coming too, so they could have 100+ players there that are going to go to some form of college, maybe not Power 4 like Miami, but there'll be over 100 kids that walk through that campus that are going to play college football this weekend. That's insane. I've never really heard of that before, but this, it's a unique situation. I'm not sure how you prioritize it, because there's going to be times when you'll have like maybe SFE is there, and maybe 24K, and maybe some like premium and all these other 7-on-7 teams. That's hard. And Mario's got to use his time well when he goes one-on-one with somebody. There will be very little of that, but it's a general view to get Miami on the map, exchange information, and talk about, transcripts, what you're looking for academically and what Miami can offer you. It opens the door. And it's, if nothing else, it's a free bonus visit for the Miami coaches to build bonds, not only with those players, but the 7-on-7 organizations and all the parents and stuff too.
Really well said. And of course, guys, we're going to be working like crazy this weekend at allhurricanes.com. So make sure you're checking out allhurricanes.com. I'll cover it as much as I can here on Locked On Canes, but we're going to be having recruiting scoops, interviews, updates on the website, allhurricanes.com throughout the weekend. Make sure you guys follow Brian on X at FBScout_Florida. Check him out all over the Locked On Podcast Network. Brian, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you very much, sir.
And thanks, everyone, so much for making us your first listen and your first watch today. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to our channel. If you listen to the audio version, we're available all over, my friends. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Odyssey app, wherever you get your pods. Locked On Canes. Leave us a 5-star rating and review, and we'll talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.